I'm going to introduce Beggi. Beggi Olafs is currently pursuing a PhD in positive organizational psychology. He is the manager of the Leader in Organizational Lab, the Love Lab, which I think is perfect, at Claremont Graduate University, and the driving force behind Novum, an innovative AI wellness coaching software. Beggi is an accomplished athlete. He's a former professional soccer player from Iceland, coach, public speaker, and author. He has written multiple books on well-being and leadership. He has a rich academic background, holding a BS in psychology and MS in applied positive psychology and coaching psychology. He holds a strong passion for the science of positive psychology and coaching psychology for bridging the gap between the academic world and real-world practice, and that's where my heart lies, absolutely, because I feel like, you know, my job, and I loved meeting Beggi because I feel like we have so much in common. He's just so much of a kindred spirit that, you know, we see our jobs as bridging, right? Bridging the science to really make it accessible and really be able to transform lives. So I can't be more happy to introduce Beggi Olafs. I don't know if you want to put it here, you want to hold it, or...
Have time as well. Normally, I'm around 6'1" in height, but I think I'm like 6'11" after that introduction from Dr. Aline. And it's such a wonderful thing to come on to the campus here, because I felt it when I met students on the street. I was searching for the building, which is quite hard, right? I think you should get like one semester just to learn about the campus, like, because it's really hard. But then I got some assistance from a human GPS, so JJ, thank you, which helped me to get into here and finding all of these wonderful people. And I've interacted with a couple of students and faculty members, and I can feel that you feel when you walk into a space, and you feel and you can sense the atmosphere. And when you walk into a space that is full of love, full of connection, you feel that. And that was exactly what I felt when I walked into the campus and into this building and sharing this space with you now. Enough of that. You know, you let the pizza, you know, a little bit processed now in your stomach, and you're maybe full or maybe not. I today want to talk about better today than yesterday, skills for a meaningful life. And a couple of years ago in Iceland, I was sitting at a coffee house. It was winter outside. I was having my Americano, European Americano, not American Americano. There's a difference between those. And I was a professional soccer player at the time. But I was losing my meaning and purpose in soccer, which I always had. But luckily, I had started studying masters in positive psychology and coaching psychology. I remember so vividly that morning, I was sipping on my coffee, all of these existential questions coming to me. Who am I? What do I want to do? Who do I want to be? And I got this amazing business idea. I thought to myself, well, I'm just going to find out how to live a meaningful life, and then I'm going to teach everybody how to achieve it in 2 weeks. And I started reading science research article after research article, and on my second day, 3 hours in, I told myself, like, holy moly, this is not going to happen in 2 weeks, but I think this will be my life's work. So after that period, I went into the rabbit hole of how to live a meaningful life, for the better or the worse, but I think it's for the better. And I tried out all of these approaches to help people. Coaching 101, helping people increase their performance and well-being and live a meaningful life. public speaking, writing books, working with executive teams, having a podcast, and I'm always trying to find different ways of influencing the world to a better extent. So today, I want to talk about what I've learned in my journey of finding what this life is about and how we can develop those skills that makes our life meaningful. And I was reading this report the other day. It's called Making Care Common. It's a group of researchers from Harvard, and the report has data on young adults, so people who are from 18 to 25. And I was devastated reading the report because one of the things I saw is that 58% of young adults, they don't experience or have a sense of meaning or purpose in their lives. And for me, reading that, I was kind of sad because I know how important it is for young people and all ages to have a sense of direction in their life, have a sense of meaning, have a sense of purpose. So this is a problem that I definitely want to invest my effort in finding some solutions to. And if you look at this, this is what I called 5 C's of a meaningful life. And I have a couple of more C's, but this is my foundation. And this is coming from the books I wrote and all of the things I've done, which I want to publish in the US one day. But today, I want to talk about 2 pillars, connection and competence. And I want to start with competence. You know, in 2011, I was 17 years old. I was in the youth team playing soccer. I was in the B team, so I was not in the best team. I was not in the A team. And I was watching the A team play. A couple of my friends were in the A team. And I was sitting there watching the game. And then some thoughts started to pop my mind. Beggi, why aren't you playing? Why are you sitting here and watching them play on the field? And you know, the easier answer would have been the coach is an idiot, right? Just like, he's crazy and doesn't choose me. A better question, a better answer was to run home. I live a mile from the pitch. Get my running gear up, find yoga weights that my parents bought and was going to do a lot of yoga, which they never did. Circle them around my ankles, and I went out for a run. I ran like 6 miles, and then I came back. And I can say then the journey of increasing my competence started. I realized that, wait a minute, I can do something to be able to get to the A team. It's not like it's in my control to do something about it. So I started working out or do exercises that would help me to become a better soccer player. And I did that for a while, which resulted in that I got to the A team. I was the captain of the A team. Then I thought to myself, whoa, this actually works. Putting in the work works. Okay, how about going to the first team? That was my next goal. And then I thought to myself, like, does it matter what you eat in terms of your performance? Well, yes. So I started trying to find foods that were healthy for me. Not a perfect journey, because I thought everything with chicken was healthy. So I was eating like Kentucky Fried Chicken and thought I was like really healthy and that was going to nourish my body. But you have to start somewhere, right? Same with the ankles on my legs. It's not healthy for you to run on just on the street with heavy weights on your legs. But then I got to the first team, and I thought to myself, why not be the captain of the first team? Well, that's another goal. And through that process, I thought, what else can I do to improve me as a soccer player? And then we talk about things such as sleep, having better mindset, stretching, doing cold plunges, you know, preparing yourself mentally before the game and before the practice. So I did everything. And I became the captain of the first team. Then I was like, whoa, holy moly, wait a minute. I think I'm going to aim to play professionally outside of Iceland. And for the next couple of 10 years, I think, that was the only thing I saw. And through that journey, I started to see the world through things that would help me reach that goal, and through the things that will interfere with my progress of reaching that goal, right? Long story short, I didn't reach my goal of becoming a professional soccer player outside of Iceland, which was hard. But I played with the champions, won the league with the champions, was in the team of the year. So, and me looking at myself in that period, I would never have ever thought that I could do that. But for me here, it's not about me, because people have more remarkable story than I ever had. But the lesson here is one of the ways to develop a more meaningful life is to have a vision. How many people here have a vision? If you raise your hand. Some kind of vision. Doesn't have to be clear. Okay? Some kind of vision. So when you have a vision for your life, and when I say vision is, who do I want to be? What kind of life do I want to live? What kind of friends do I want to have? What kind of partner do I want to attract? What kind of career do I want to have? And when you have a vision, you actually write that down, and you don't have to remember it, because you will get a workbook with all of the takeaways that you can do by yourself. When you have a vision for your life, a couple of things happens. Firstly, you increase order in your life, so there's less chaos. Because when you don't have a vision, you're nowhere. And that takes a toll on our stress and anxiety, because we don't know where we are. When we have a vision, we know where we are and know where we're going. And that brings more order outside of the chaos. Secondly, if you aim for something, you might actually hit the target. There's a strong likelihood that you can actually hit the target. And if you don't hit the target, well, you probably learn a bunch on the way, a bunch. And also, when you have a vision, you make better decisions. Because when you have a vision, and let's say, for example, you have a vision of getting a certain type of job. Okay, to get that certain type of job, you have to do well in your studies, you have to maybe network with people, you need to increase your competence. And when you're faced with a decision on whether I should watch the 5th episode of Selling Sunset, or maybe write for an hour instead, when you have a vision, you're more likely to make the decision of actually writing, which will be painful in the moment, but will bring you greater rewards in the future. And this goes to everything, not just your career aspiration, also your health. If you have a vision for your health, and you want to be healthier, and you maybe have a vision that you don't want to use alcohol, and you're faced with having an alcohol or a Diet Coke or whatever, you're more likely to choose the Diet Coke. So we see our lives through the vision, which is quite fascinating. It directs our attention. And that's why it's really important to have somewhat kind of a vision. But then the question becomes, what if I don't? What if I know nothing about my vision in life and know what I want to do? And there are plenty of people there, and that's completely fine. But then you can reverse engineer the process. And how do you reverse engineer the process? You think, what is something that I could do today that I know it will be extremely beneficial for me tomorrow or in the future? One thing. Doesn't matter. Pick something. Because if you pick something and you decide to increase your competence on that point, whether that's directed to your relationships, to your studies, writing, to your career, to your leisure, doesn't matter. But if you pick something, what happens is that when you pick something and you decide to focus on that, like I did in my journey, I started focusing on exercising, and then I started focusing on nutrition like a year afterwards, and then I took the mindset. So when you focus on one thing at a time, and when you focus on that, really focus on that, you can feel that you're going to improve in that aspect. And when you improve in the thing you're focusing on, that's kind of, we were talking about this in the Mind Lab, and the sense of self-efficacy, when you have a sense of progress, that's pretty addictive. You know, when you go out for a run and you decided to run for 10 minutes, and you decided to do that for a week, but then the next week you decided to increase it to 20 minutes, and then, you know, after 3 months you increase it to 30 minutes, etc. The progress, that is what makes you and your life meaningful. An important aspect here is whether you have a long-term vision or you have something small that you're focusing on, it's not about when you achieve that vision, when you become the professional soccer player, when you finish school, when you get that dream job, because we tend to put so much emphasis on being happy and living life until we get to a certain point. Agreed or not? Some heads are, yeah, okay. Because what happens when that happens, what occurs when that happens is that we rely so much on something that is going to make us happy. We have high expectation that something is going to make us happy. Like I had when I was becoming a champion of Iceland. I was like, finally, I will be happy. After 2 weeks, we get the title, and I will be extremely happy for the rest of my life. What happened? We won the title, super fun. I enjoyed it so much, so fun in the evening. I wake up the next morning, and I was like, shouldn't I feel different? Shouldn't I have it figured it all out? Shouldn't I be extremely happy? Well, no. But what we tend to do when we focus on the pursuit of happiness, and happiness is good, but focusing on and striving for happiness as a set point in the future, that can be actually detrimental. That's a risk factor for depression and loneliness. And that's the reason I think you should aim for a meaningful life, but not exactly a happy one, although happiness is a part of this whole journey. But what happens when you have this sense of self-efficacy and you have a vision, there is where your vast majority of your positive emotions are going to occur in your life. When you feel a sense of progress, you're going to experience enthusiasm, motivation, gratitude, happiness, and all kinds of other positive emotions that will happen when you are moving to your vision. So having a vision is one part to increase your competence. Starting small is another part, to pick something as well. The third thing, among many others, is thinking, if you don't have a vision, thinking about a moment which you experienced in your life when you were doing something, whether it's working on a school project, you were having a conversation with a friend, you were doing an extremely hard exercise, and you kind of forgot yourself. The time maybe passed by so quickly, and you were optimizing your performance, but strangely enough, you also felt quite good in that experience. In positive psychology, we call it the state of flow. Raise your hand if you ever experienced the state of flow. Okay, many people. And when you experience the state of flow, what's happening in that moment, you're probably using some of your strengths. You are doing something that you're good at. So a cue for what is not your problem, but cue for what gives you meaning in life, whether it's what you're interested in, or whether it's the strength you're using, there's some important information to think about regarding that. Because these moments, we are stretching our skills, we're using our strength, we're doing something that interests us, And if you can identify these moments and try to live more of them, that's a good path also for increasing your competence and living a meaningful life. Sip of water. Okay. So we just talked about more, I would say, proactive competence. But what when life hits you with a storm? You have your vision, you're developing your competence, but something happens that you can't have any control of. And I thought always I would be happy in life. Like a couple of years ago, maybe 4 years ago, I understood that other people felt pain and suffering, but I was like, I haven't experienced that. I'm just happy, you know, I'm happy all the time. And of course I had painful losses and all of that, but I haven't been unhappy for a while, or ever in my life, but I understood that other people could experience that. And I didn't know if I would ever experience that, being unhappy or experience suffering, but boy was I wrong, boy was I wrong. I had a girlfriend for 8 years in Iceland. She was the love of my life, saw the light in her, saw everything good. We have the name of our children's. And she was the only love of my life. And me and my friend group, we all had parents that were together, and that was my view of the world. It was like you find your partner and you stay happily ever after. Boom. We break up. And they say you go from a boy to a man when you go through a breakup, and I think that's lightly said. Because I experienced suffering in a way that I couldn't imagine. I think it was the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with in my whole life. So all of these emotions that you feel, sadness, anger, denial, despair, all of these difficult emotions that you feel when you go through difficulties, I can resonate with that. And I can also resonate with why during suffering we tend to use unwise method to alleviate suffering. You know, we distract ourselves, we search for alcohol or drugs, or we work a lot, or we do all of these kind of things without facing our emotions. And I can tell you this, and you can laugh, because, not laughing at the fact, but my grandfather, which I had a great relationship with, he passed away 3 weeks after we broke up. And I was literally in the gym in Iceland. You can laugh at this now. And I was doing, like, in the middle of a set, I just completely broke down. I was in the set and I started crying in the middle of the set. And that's kind of funny when you look at it, like, afterwards. It was not funny in the moment, although you can use humor in the moment, which I did, certainly, because, you know, humor is one of the tools that is amazing when you're dealing with suffering. And there's a part of having a humor when you're dealing with suffering. Just make humor out of it. It can alleviate a lot of the pain associated with the situation you're in. And so how can you develop the resilience? What is the difference between people that something happens, something difficult, and they don't reach to the same level or beyond that level as they were before, and the people who actually go through difficulties and suffering and they become a better person? They have a better life. What is the difference between those people? Well, it's not just based on my experience. I'm not like read one book on suffering and then I'm teaching everybody. It's also from the decades of research. We know that Firstly, proactively building your competence that makes you more prepared. So I sometimes define that as voluntarily suffering, doing hard things, because that prepares you when the storm hits. But you can never really be prepared for the storm that life throws at you. So how do you respond in those situations? Well, the first is emotional courage. Actually, having the ability to sit with these emotions, all of these hard emotions, difficult emotions, and to sit with them and experience them. Because when you throw them away, you bury them down, they have control over you. You don't have control over them. And so as you accept them, they're a part of who you are, the great paradox there is that you regain more control over them. Which is quite interesting, and this is, of course, as well with thoughts. How many of you think, okay, how many of you try to fight your thoughts? Any? Okay, if I would ask you now to close your eyes and try as hard as you think to not think about a pink polar bear. Don't think about the pink polar bear. Okay, you can open your eyes. How many of you did think about a pink polar bear? Okay, some of you are resilient and didn't think about a pink polar bear. I like that. But this is the great paradox with our emotions and our thoughts. When we deny them, we don't accept them, they will have control over us. I've assisted so many clients that are like, I'm trying so hard to not think about having these thoughts. And I'm like, well, that could be the issue. So emotional courage is one aspect. Social support, of course, is another huge asset. And I will talk more about that later. One thing that is also really important is positive meaning making. And what do I mean by that? Maybe not when you're during the storm, when you can't see what's happening and understand what's happening, but trying to think about what is something that I'm taking from this lesson, from this experience, that has helped me become a better person. Did I notice any strengths that I didn't have? Do I have new possibilities in my life? Am I close to my friends and family members? Do I have increased spirituality in my life? And there's actually a big literature on post-traumatic growth. So people don't just go back to baseline, they go above and beyond the baseline when they face difficulties in their lives. And also in the midst of suffering, because I was talking about positive emotions, which are a huge asset for resilient, experiencing positive emotions while you're in the storm. I didn't know that you're allowed to do that. Are you allowed to experience something positive when you're going through something extremely difficult? So by having this little moment, and what Viktor Frankl did, do you know Viktor Frankl that wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning? Do you know that book? Some of you do. I think it's one of the best books. It's my most recommended book. And when he was in the camp, he had some vision, like I talked about before. He used humor, like I also talked about. But he also had a blink of moments where he experienced awe, positive emotions. He was watching birds fly. He was watching the trees. So in the midst of suffering, you can also forget yourself and experience some positive emotions that even for seconds, for minutes, and that is extremely important in helping you going through that suffering. How do you like the AI-generated pictures, by the way? I mean, when I did this slide, I was like, well, I didn't make it. And people will see it's AI, so. Sometimes they lack like fingers, which is quite interesting, but they're getting pretty good. Is there something wrong? No. I mean, the eyes of this dude there, it's not really good. Anyhow, so we've done with competence, both the proactive and the responsive one. I was flying from Seattle to Los Angeles 5 months ago. And I hadn't experienced turbulence in a long time. But what happens when you experience turbulence, which I was experiencing, a lot of turbulence, you get a little bit stressed. And when I was experiencing that turbulence with myself, holding my seat, I started thinking about death. And what I thought about is like, what would actually happen if I would die in this plane crash? And what I started thinking about was not my achievements, not my degrees, not my socioeconomic status, not many followers I had on Instagram. I started thinking about my family and friends. I started thinking about, wow, I miss them. If I could do something now that would help me tell them how much I love them. And thinking about all of the experience I had with them. Thinking about all of the wonderful people I've come across in my life, and my family and friends. And this is what, when people are asked about what gives them meaning in life or what makes their life meaningful, most of people will answer by relationships, friends or family. But sometimes we neglect those relationships because we're so busy achieving things in our career, whatever, but we forget to nourish what makes this life meaningful. Experiences with people that we know, that we don't know, and there's a huge also literature. So there was done this longitudinal study at Harvard, and they tracked 802 men, I think, the past 80 years. And they measured their physiology, quantitative questionnaires, qualitative interviews. So they triangulate the concept of health, meaning, and happiness quite well. And they basically found one thing out. The by far most important thing that contributes to our health, happiness, and meaning in life is the quality of our relationships. Which is fascinating, because we don't, for example, for health, we don't think about that relationship is going to add to our health as eating the right food or having enough sleep and all of that. Well, there's also another study that indicated that if you lack high quality connections or relationships in your life, you're 50% likely to die from all-cause mortality. It's as bad for you as smoking cigarettes, worse for you than being obese or physical inactivity. So sometimes we, as I said, we neglect our relationships. And this is, for me, because the same report I talked about earlier, 34% of young adults experience loneliness. And loneliness, you can experience loneliness although you're around people all the time. Loneliness is that you experience that people that are around you, they don't understand you. They don't get you. You're not with the right people. And that can be really, really hard. So how can you increase the connection in your life? Well, one is to find your troop. How do you find your troop? Because Brené Brown, she's a researcher, a qualitative researcher. She found out that the opposite of belonging to a group, that's trying to fit in. What do I mean by that? Everybody goes through this experience, this challenge of like, how do I stay true to myself, but how do I fit in with a group? And should I change myself to fit in the group, or should I stay authentic and true to myself? The first one is easy. You change yourself to fit in. You know, you change yourself, but you're sacrificing who you are for a group that you want to belong to. The second one is quite hard. It's being true to your multiple selves and stay with that path and hopefully attract and find the people that you enjoy being around, that you can be yourself with. But it can really be really hard of finding these people, you know. It took me, when I moved to the States, it took me 9 months to find my troop. 9 months to find the people I kind of liked. They got me, I got them, I enjoyed their company, they had similar values like me. It took me 9 months. So it's a really hard process. But in that period, and this is what's fascinating about connections, is that the weak connections that we have with weak ties, such as strangers, they can be really important to our health, well-being, and meaning. And when I was in Claremont, I went always to the same coffee house. And what I love about Americans is that we can talk. Talk about life, talk about their life and my life. You know, when I get a coffee in Iceland, I say, hey, how's it going? 500 kronas. They like, just tell me the price. They don't say anything to me. So through that period when I was finding my troop, these weak ties, having a conversation with them, connecting to them, that gave me meaning. And that helped me navigate through the difficulties I was navigating through with finding my troop. And this is actually quite accurate to emotional health, because we know this concept by Barbara Fredrickson. I don't know if you read anything about her, but he calls it positivity resonance. And she calls it love 2.0. That love is not about this magic feeling that you will be happily ever after and you don't have to search for it again. But she said that love 2.0 is found in those micro moments when you experience positive emotions with other people in verbal and behavioral synchrony. So by having interactions with people, whether it's your friends, your family members, or strangers on the street, and experience positivity resonance, your life gets richer. And for me, just a 5-minute talk with the baristas, that was enough for me. So when you're finding your troop, I wouldn't neglect having a conversation with a stranger, because lots of good things can happen to that. Not only good for your emotional health, you know, but also like if you're searching for a partner, if you want to get business opportunities, you should talk to the person that's behind you in front of you at Starbucks. And that's scary, because what happens if they reject me? Well, one thing for sure, being comfortable with being rejected is the only given in life. You're gonna get rejected. You apply for 20 schools and you get into one. You ask 100 people to go on a date with you and you get maybe 5 yes. When I had my podcast, I sent probably like 500 emails out, and probably 300 of those didn't even answer me. Doesn't matter. Because when you get that yes, that will make your life richer, more meaningful, and all of that. But you have to be willing to endure the rejection. But I'm coming to my point, because, okay, how do you develop high-quality connections? And if you think about it a little bit, it all comes down to how we communicate on a personal level. Both with weak ties, such as the baristas, or on Starbucks, or with your friends. It's all about your communication. And who here has interacted with a person, and after the interactions with the person, you felt increased vitality. You felt increased stamina to do things. You felt more, you just felt more energized. Anybody here has experienced that? Okay, that person was a positive energizer. And what do I mean by that? Positive energizers are people that you interact with, and I phrase it like this: I want to run through walls after I interact with them. And these are people that you want to seek relationship with and you want to get to know better, because these are the people who are worthwhile having in your life. But how can you actually be a positive energizer? And we know this from studies after studies and coaching psychology, what I learned about and what I've been applying. It's basically teaching you how to communicate with people. So I'm going to talk about 4 ways when you're communicating. 4 ways, yeah. So first one is actually to listen. What do I mean by actually listen? How many here in has experienced that they're listening to a person, you know, but they're only waiting to bring their own response? Yeah? I mean, I'm certainly in this camp. But what happens then is that you're not listening what the person is talking about. You're just thinking about the smart thing you can say that relates to your experience or question that you want to ask. But that might be after 5 minutes, and then the conversation is about a completely another thing. And so what I talk about here is listening to understand instead of listening to respond. Because when you listen to understand, you're actually listening to the words of the person. And maybe you attend to something in their body language, their tone of the words. And what happens when you truly listen to people, they will tell you all kinds of stuff. You know, one of my most successful coaching clients came into me for an hour. They talked the whole time. I asked 2 questions, and maybe summarized once. And then they told me, Beggi, thank you. This was the best session I've ever attended to. And I was like, well, I only listened. And when you truly listen, people will tell you all kinds of things. And what also happens when you listen is that, oh, there's somebody here that is actually interested in what I'm saying and to my life and all of that. Which brings me to the second point, is curiosity. Developing the curiosity by asking questions when you're listening to the person. Instead of bringing your point out, is to ask them deeper about something they were talking about. It's like, so you have the conversation, you notice that they're talking about something interesting, you think about it in your head, and then you can ask more questions about what they were just talking about. And I have my best friend, his name is Gummi. We have a strange name in Iceland, you know, it's a very strange name. My full name is Bergsveinn. It's like some people think it's German, but it's Icelandic. My friend Gummi, everybody likes Gummi. Everybody likes him. And the analyzer I am, I was like, why do people like Gummi? Because I like him a lot. And I figured that out. Because he was so curious. He was not this kind of annoying curious, you know, asking about how much you get your salaries in or how many, you know, something like that. He was genuinely, whether he was meeting you for the first time or he was your best friend, he was genuinely interested in hearing more about you and your life. And that is what happened when you're curious about other people. They like you more, but another bonus is that you will learn more. Talking to another person is like having a library and reading books from a library. You can learn so much from people's experiences, so when you listen and you ask questions, you gain the knowledge that can help you develop your skills and competence as a consequence. Third one I called paraphrasing. So when you're listening to the person here, then you paraphrase in 1 or 2 sentences what they just said. What happens there is that the person is actually, whoa, this person was listening to me because she understands what I was saying, and she says either yes or no, which is also beneficial because then you stay on track in the conversation and you actually know that you understood the person and the person knows that you understand yourself. So that's a really important skill. The last skill, I think, is probably the most important skills among positive energizers. It's how you celebrate positive news in other people's life. And that's actually how people celebrate your positive news. It's a greater predictor if they will be in your life than how they react when you have negative news. which is quite interesting, right? And positive people have positive news quite often. So like, if you take people for 10 days, 7 of those days they will tell people about a positive experience in their life. And you can answer it by 4 ways with other people's positive news. And let's take an example. Let's say you got a new job. You got a new job. And you come home to your roommate, which is in the computer, and you tell them, I got a new job. One way is being like, nice, and just keep being in the computer. It's like answering, active, but like you're not really doing anything else. The second one is like, I just got a new job. That's fantastic, but I was ordering pizza and it's coming after 50 minutes. Do you like pepperoni? Is that okay for you? So you just start to talk about something else than the experience. The third one is, I just got a new job. Well, didn't you have another job, and don't you have so many to do in your studies? And you were talking about you were stressed, and there will be a lot of responsibility in this new job, and like, have you figured that all out? It's like pointing the negative thing about the positive news, right? And the last thing is, I just got a new job. That's amazing. How did you feel when you got the new job? What emotions did you experience? What are you excited about the new job? What are you stressed about your new job? It's like asking more questions and celebrating the positive news like it was your own. Like you were winning. And what happens is 2 things. The first thing is that the positive emotion that the person experiencing, that person will experience greater positive emotions. The second thing that will happen is that will increase your relationship bond. So it will make you more closer. And this is a great skill also to have and be mindful of when people are bringing positive news in your life. So these 4 things: listening, curiosity, summarizing, active, constructive, responding, or capitalization. The last thing, this was the communication AI slide. I forgot myself. The last thing I want to talk about is that in the same report, 44% of young adults, they experience that they don't matter to others. And I've been studying mattering for the past 2 years. And not mattering to others is detrimental to us. But I want to say you matter way much than you realize. Everything you do and don't do matters, which can be scary, right? It can be scary to think about everything I do and everything I don't do matters. But I believe that's the case. Because when you start to build your competence, increase the quality of your connections, or start to work on yourself, what happens is that all the people around you will be positively influenced for that. So if you're improving yourself, your friendship gets better, your relationship gets better, your schoolmates get happier. This is a strange fact. If you have a friend and they live in 1 mile radius from you, and that friend becomes from unhappy to happy, it increases your likelihood of becoming happier by 25%. That's quite fascinating. That's quite interesting. So if I become happy, I live a more meaningful life, I can influence other people. And you will influence at least 1,000 people in your life, or have the potential to influence these 1,000 people. And these people have the possibility to influence all the 1,000 people in their lives. And that means you're 1 person from 1,000,000. So I want to end the lecture by saying that the journey of increasing your competence, developing a relationship, is going to be the journey that this life is all about. 1 of the aspects, 2 of the aspects. And the journey is not to found up on the hill when you get somewhere. The journey is on the meaning of life is to be found on the way up to the mountain. And to enjoy that and savor that. You all have enormous potential that's built in you. And you will only figure out what potential is built in you by going out there, developing your competence, trying to be a little bit better today than you were yesterday, and your life will become a little bit more meaningful as a consequence. You are light in this world. That's for sure. So you matter. Thank you. Now you can pick up your phones. We have 10 minutes for Q&A. And you can go to this site here, put in this code. This is completely anonymous. You won't see everybody won't see everybody's questions because I know there's funny people here. But you can ask me any questions. And I will pick some of those that I think is most interesting to this talk here. So I'll give you around 2-3 minutes to file a question, and then I will pick a few of them to answer. We have 21 questions. That's a lot. That's a lot. And they keep coming. 22. You can keep dialing them in. I'm trying to answer as many as I can. You talked about a breakup. I'm dealing with that now. How can you let go, accept, and move on? How do you reinvest in yourself, find peace and meaning again? It's exhausting being sad and not moving forward. First I want to say is that I deeply feel your pain and suffering. And it's a storm. And sometimes when you're in a storm, you don't see a way out because you're overwhelmed with these difficult emotions and you don't think you will ever go through it. But my best bet is to, which I would have loved that I would have done, is to close the door and move on. Completely close it. Completely close it and move on. I'm not thinking about whether this person will come back into my life, whether we'll find ourselves each other again. Completely close it, move on, because that is going to be the best way for you to recover, but also the best way as well if you want in the end get the partner in your life, is to close the door and move on. I'm doing like a squat exercise here. But reinvesting yourself, it takes time. Allow yourself to be human. You know, allow yourself to experience this emotion and having a life that's not perfect. You know, allow yourself to, you know, keep going, doing the things you want to do, but, you know, show yourself some self-compassion. Be kind to yourself, because It is exhausting, and it's difficult to be in the storm, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and I believe that you will absolutely get through that storm at the end. And allowing you to feel emotions. Talk to friends, family members. You know, use them as your therapist. That's what I did, and many of my friends were therapists, so that's quite funny. Also, we have 38 questions. I think we need to have another lecture, probably. But for the sake of time, I want to take one easy one. Is Messi or Ronaldo? Ronaldo. Ronaldo or Messi, another question. My rational brain wants to say Messi, but my heart says Ronaldo. I'm sorry. I know, you can't beat Messi. Whoa. Okay, this is an interesting one. I'm going to take this one, and we're going to end with that. And then, you know, email me your question, and I can have a great time trying to answer, although I will need to get to know you. This one is, how do I make a big decision? How do you know which one to pick? Well, paradox of choice. So, with increased freedom, we can swipe our potential partner away. We have all of these opportunities for going to school, all of the jobs we need, and that's great. But with freedom comes responsibility. And if you haven't read the book Paradox of Choice, I encourage you to read it. And there's a couple of questions of reading books. I would encourage Viktor Frankl's Search for Meaning as well. And hopefully when somebody gets me a publisher, you read mine in the future, maybe. But yeah, with the decision, to make a big decision, it's good to think about, so you have 3 ways to make a decision. One is in your head, that's your rational brain. One is the gut, what is gut telling you? And then what's your heart telling you, and that's your values. So you can, and sometimes your rational brain and your gut is fighting each other. You know you want to make a certain decision, but your rational brain is like, I should make this decision. And one good thing to realize is that, because this is a thing that I've experienced and a lot of younger people experience, is that they get paralyzed by all of the options they're making and making the big decision. But sometimes you just need to make the decision and stick to it, because what happens, you're not making a decision for your life. What happens is when you make a decision, you figure out if it works out or not. If it works out, I'll keep doing it. If it doesn't work out, doesn't matter. I'll make another decision and start doing that. And that's what being young is about. It's about making decisions. But it's not the decision of your life, although I can certainly relate to that, is how it feels. Like, this decision is going to define my life, who I am, what I'm going to do. Sometimes you just got to make the decision. Take a leap. Have a leap of faith. Have a leap of courage. Because it needs to be courageous to make a decision. And the worst thing you can do when making a decision is not deciding to make a not decision. Because deciding not to make a decision, that's a decision. But what happens when you're in that space? Well, you don't feel well, because you know the decision needs to be made, but you're just postponing it. So by making the decision, although you think you're making yourself a favor, but not making a decision, it will influence your life way more. By making the decision, despite all the possibilities and despite all of the freedom, that can help you figure out who you are, what you want to do. So I would say, make a decision, don't overthink it, and take the leap. But I want to thank you all. I'm extremely grateful for your time, attention, for the Love Button Foundation that speaks to my heart about kindness and spreading love. And yeah, I just want to end with that. I'm completely grateful for this experience and your time, and best of luck in all of your future adventures. Thank you.
So if a positive influencer makes us want to run through walls, I think you got a whole group of people here wanting to run through a wall tonight, Beggi. Thank you very much.